you are on the sidelines largely now in terms of making your investments.
God, I haven't looked at a stock quote in almost 3 years.
Okay,
Really?
so
Honestly.
So we won't ask you to pick any stocks for us here today, but give us some sense. Do you wish you were back in it? Are there times that you wish you were, or if you were, what would you be looking at right now?
The fact of the matter is, I was a professional investor for 30 years, and I loved it, and I loved the people I was working with, and I love investing. But I really stopped cold turkey at the end of 2012. And since then, I've been doing a different job and going at it as hard as I can. And I'm really glad I did it, and I'm really glad I'm doing something else now.
Does the market volatility incentivize you in any way? Over the last 2 days, we've had Howard Marks, Steve Schwartzman, Mark Lazary, who are chomping at the bit. They're not necessarily buying big now, but volatility is when true professional investors, not trend followers, really see great value. And nothing here makes you turn and say, I got to get in. I mean, you have the bug. If you have it, you have it.
Actually, I see the world a little differently now.
How?
And I think what I see in terms of both investing and everything else is a longer time frame. So from my point of view, if you think about price and you think about growth, over 10 years, price gets washed out by growth.
One more time?
Well, if you think about how a company does over 10 years, whether it's 10 or 20% cheaper when you buy it, is very relevant in the short term, but the longer you go, the more it is about how the company...
So, Tom, does that mean that...
here in New York. But when you say it's longer rather than shorter, that's the way you look at it. That's not necessarily the way current investors, or are you saying...
No, current investors have to be...
I mean, it depends on what kind of investor you are, right? Does that give the advantage to the Schwartzmans, right? The guys who have money locked up for 7 and 10 years instead of the hedge funds, who've got monthly or quarterly liquidity?
Well, if you... A, yes, and B, think about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is measured in terms of some public stock picks, but also he says that he thinks his ability is to look 10 years out.
Oh, well, he's also got permanent capital.
But Eric, that's what makes them the smartest guy in the room.
It is.
You say, does Warren Buffett or Steve Schwartzman have an unfair advantage? No, they had the foresight to say, I'm going to lock that money up.
I think the other thing that's really true is, one of the mistakes I think about investing is the whole idea of beat the clock. Like, it's a good idea until it isn't a good idea. I know it's not going to be a good idea, but right now it's a good idea. I honestly think that's a huge mistake, because the real thing to do is to have something where you feel the wind's at your back, and the longer you wait, the better it is. So if it doesn't turn out well in the short run, that's a chance to get bigger and buy more.
Are you laughing at your neighbors? I mean, you're a California guy where, every tech guy's got the greatest idea and they're all doing the next big thing. Are you saying, you know what, boys, we're going to see a lot less of you in the future?
No. I think the idea of starting companies that are going to change the world is something, I mean, that is a total California idea. That go into a garage and change the world with your best friend. I think that's great. I'm a huge fan of it.
It's just that we don't have garages in New York City, because if we did, we would definitely
I have one up in Westchester. So, but we're going to talk about some of those new tech companies. But before that, recognizing you've been out for a couple of years, is your sense that business itself has changed of investing? I mean, if you had to do over again, suppose go back 30 years now, would you do it again?
Yeah. Oh, look, I have no regrets about my investing career. I loved investing. If I didn't think there was something that absolutely was necessary for me to do, I'd be back investing full time. But the fact of the matter is, I feel really compelled to work on the issues that have pulled me in.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those issues.
Let's do.
One of the things, Tom, you're very active in climate change, right? You worked with former Mayor Mike Bloomberg, right? Majority shareholder, the guy who is our boss. Let's
so
put
whatever
it that way.
we do together must be really smart.
And Hank Paulson, on this report last year, which I talked to Hank about, that tries to calculate the cost for the economy, the cost to companies of the impact of climate change. And the thing about that is, and you pointed it out in the report, is that companies get this already. What I don't understand is if the companies get it, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and corporate America is traditionally the group behind the Republican Party, how come the Republican Party, or parts of it, haven't come around to that point of view, and what's it going to take?
If I was allowed to give an opinion right now, I'd say amen, but I can't.
And I would say it's very simple, winning primaries.
The American people have moved, including Republicans. If you look over the last couple of years, the majority we're asking candidates to come out with a plan to get us to 50% clean energy by 2030. the majority of Republicans agree that they want that, and they want the candidates to stand for that. It really isn't a question so much anymore of convincing people, because everybody agrees that this is something we have to do together. The real point in terms of elections and getting people elected is for people to care about it a lot. You have to think that this is not just, if this is your 10th most important issue, you're not going to change your vote, and so it doesn't really matter.